Are you ready to learn the truth about the final hours of the greatest island capital of the ancient world? Tenochtitlan was a true marvel of engineering, rising right in the middle of a salt lake. Its majestic temples and palaces captivated the imagination of anyone who saw them for the first time.
However, behind the glitter of gold and stone lay the tragedy of an entire people trapped in a trap.
The city's fate was sealed the moment the enemy's ring finally closed in. Most historical chronicles conceal the true picture of how events unfolded in the streets of this vast metropolis during the prolonged siege. We are accustomed to hearing only dry facts about the empire's fall, but the reality was far more terrifying. A vast city with magnificent canals, wide squares, and grandiose stone pyramids slowly descended into chaos under the methodical onslaught of the Spanish conquistadors and their numerous allies. The water in the canals, which had once served as transport arteries, now became the site of fierce battles on boats. 80 days of continuous fighting transformed the architectural landscape of the once thriving city beyond recognition, turning it into a complex arena for engineering ingenuity.
Beautiful gardens were trampled, and bridges across the dams were destroyed to halt the advance of the enemy cavalry.
Watch the video to the end, and you'll learn why the surviving defenders called this day the end of the world and the beginning of a completely new era. You'll understand exactly what fatal mistakes led to the fall of such a powerful civilization. We'll tell you about the last words of the great ruler and what became of the city's treasures after its surrender. This story of the fall of Tenochtitlan forever changed the course of world history and the map of the entire planet. Discover how a completely different world began to be built on the ruins of the ancient pyramids. What if I told you that everything you believed is a lie? The true power of the conquistadors lay not in their technological superiority, but in their incredible ability to reshape the landscape right in the midst of a massive offensive. Spanish troops methodically advanced along the long stone causeways that connected the island capital to the mainland. Each captured section of the road was immediately fortified and widened to ensure safe passage for heavy infantry and heavy supply trains carrying valuable provisions. This incredibly complex engineering feat required tremendous concentration and constant monitoring of the fluctuating water levels in the deep canals. The conquistadors marveled at the pristine cleanliness of the straight streets and the strict order of the spacious markets, comparing this metropolis to the finest cities of the Old World. However, now this architectural beauty was inexorably disappearing beneath a thick layer of gray dust and jagged debris, settling heavily on the facades of once majestic buildings. Every heavy step of the advancing army wiped unique cultural monuments from the face of the earth, turning them into ordinary construction debris for the dense backfilling of the canals. Sunlight struggled with great difficulty to break through the dense veil of thick smoke that constantly hung over the central and wealthiest districts of the besieged capital. This heavy smog rose from the burning cedar beams and thatched roofs, reliably concealing the majestic silhouettes of the tall stepped pyramids from prying eyes. The air was thoroughly saturated with the acrid smell of smoke, which strangely mingled with the scent of blooming gardens still preserved on the remote outskirts of the vast island. Without their constant physical support and deep understanding of the local, ever-changing geography, the advance of the steel-clad Spanish units would have been simply impossible. Allied infantry units moved in endless, coordinated columns, methodically and tirelessly clearing block after block of high barricades and complex defensive structures. Their precise coordination with the heavy European infantry formed a single, well-oiled machine, where each individual unit performed its strictly defined function. The night hours brought no relief, as the city remained in a state of constant tension and anticipation of new surprise attacks. The darkness concealed the extent of the destruction, but sharpened the senses, forcing the sentries to listen anxiously for the slightest splash of water or the rustle of falling stones. The lights of the few bonfires revealed only isolated fragments of the stonework from the darkness, casting bizarre and frightening shadows on the surviving walls of the temples. The defenders used the cover of night to repair the destroyed barricades, silently dragging heavy logs and basalt blocks to the most vulnerable sections of the defenses.
This invisible nightwork effort allowed local engineers to at least slightly the relentless advance of the European invaders.
Each new dawn illuminated an increasingly surreal landscape in which the remnants of an ancient civilization were bizarrely intertwined with elements of the new European fortifications. The conquistadors pressed forward relentlessly, leaving behind not a flourishing city, but a dry, rocky desert, devoid of shady gardens and spacious squares. The transformation of the landscape occurred at an alarming speed, forever erasing the physical traces of 1,000 years of history in pursuit of a single military objective. We'd love to hear your perspective on such radical siege tactics, so be sure to leave a comment below and let us know where you stand on this. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on the most detailed and captivating historical investigations. I will reveal the best-kept secret of this grand military campaign, one that is rarely mentioned in standard school history textbooks. Specially built wooden brigantines, launched from the salty waters of Lake Texcoco, played a huge role in the successful advance through the complex city streets. These maneuverable sail-and-oar vessels were assembled by Spanish craftsmen from parts carried by hand over high mountain passes from distant Tlaxcala. The resulting construction debris was immediately dumped into the nearest deep canals to create wide, level platforms for deploying artillery. This process of filling in the waterways irreversibly altered the island's complex ecological system, turning clear channels into stagnant, muddy pools.
The pride of Aztec engineering, their perfect waterways, now served only as a foundation for the advance of a foreign war machine.
The defenders of Tenochtitlan attempted to resist this process by driving sharp wooden stakes into the bottom of the canals to pierce the hulls of the advancing brigantines. This hidden underwater threat forced the Spanish sailors to move with extreme caution, constantly probing the murky bottom with long wooden poles. Any obstacles they encountered had to be removed by hand, requiring them to dive into the cold water under a hail of stones and arrows flying from the neighboring flat roofs. This grueling struggle for every meter of water significantly slowed the pace of the advance, but could not stop it entirely. The tenacity of both sides turned the canal system into the most complex and dangerous zone of the conflict. Where engineering clashed with cunning, the situation was exacerbated by heavy seasonal rains, which turned the dust of ruined buildings into thick, sticky mud that clogged the mechanisms of the arquebuses. Heavy clouds often obscured the sun, plunging the embattled city into a gray twilight, through which the flashes of cannon fire barely pierced. Moisture seeped through the seams of the steel armor, causing rapid corrosion of the metal and causing immense physical discomfort to the Spanish infantry. Local warriors accustomed to the humid climate and wearing light cotton armor gained a brief advantage in mobility on the slippery stones.
However, European training and strict discipline allowed the conquistadors to hold their positions even under the most adverse weather conditions.
Gradually, the Spanish command came to the conclusion that it was necessary to completely and totally demolish all surviving structures along their long route. This radical decision was dictated by the desire to secure their rear from constant guerrilla raids launched by local residents from rooftops. The consequences of this engineering tactic proved catastrophic for the cultural heritage of the entire vast Mesoamerican region and its centuries-old history. Vast archives of illuminated codices stored in palace libraries vanished beneath the rubble along with the buildings, turning to dust. Not only was the city's physical structure destroyed, but also its intellectual memory preserved in stone, wood, and fragile paper. How much do you think the destruction of the main aqueducts and libraries predetermined the historical outcome of this entire protracted campaign? In the next chapter, you will learn what unique tactics allowed the heavy infantry to advance across the unstable ground of the artificial islands. The secret, passed down from generation to generation by researchers, lies in the visual and structural contrast between two completely different war machines. The conquistadors' heavy infantry formed a dense steel monolith, moving in strict geometric order along the capital's stone-paved avenues. The reflection of the dim sun on the polished steel cuirasses and tall helmets created the illusion of an invulnerable metal beast slowly creeping forward. This compact formation, armed with long pikes and heavy halberds, was virtually impenetrable to the light melee weapons of the local warriors.
The Spanish phalanx functioned as a single organism, where one soldier's shield reliably covered the vulnerable flank of his nearest comrade in arms.
The elite warriors of the metropolis facing them relied on maneuverability, individual skill, and the use of obsidian weapons of striking sharpness. Their wooden swords, fitted with sharp edges of volcanic glass, were capable of severing a sturdy pike shaft with a single precise strike. However, obsidian's brittleness made it ineffective in direct combat against forged European steel, forcing a change in battle tactics. Local commanders preferred to attack steel formations from the flanks or rain down a hail of stones from the heights of ruined temples. This forced the conquistadors to maintain a constant circular defense, slowing their already unhurried advance through the narrow city streets. Spanish officers kept meticulous records of materials expended, realizing that under the conditions of a strict blockade, there would simply be nowhere to replenish their arsenal. To conserve scarce lead, soldiers often collected spent bullets after battle to remelt them at the evening campfires. This harsh trench economy demanded the utmost care and a rational approach to the use of personal weapons from every conquistador. In the evenings, when the intensity of the urban fighting subsided slightly, the conquistadors' camps turned into huge, bustling field repair workshops. Blacksmiths continuously pumped bellows, straightening dense and expensive helmets, and resharpening the blades of long halberds that had become dull from striking rocks. Carpenters crafted new pike shafts from sturdy local woods, carefully fitting them to the size of the heavy steel pike heads. Saddlers repaired the leather straps of armor and crossbows, using every available material found in the city's abandoned houses and workshops.
This routine technical work was no less important to the campaign's ultimate success than direct participation in the brutal street fighting.
It was precisely this combination of advanced metallurgy, strict discipline, and constant technical support that made the European infantry the dominant force on the continent. They slowly but surely pushed through the defenders' lines, leaving behind only flat patches of broken stone and the smoldering remains of beams. The city, built of fragile, porous, toughened wood, proved powerless against the methodical onslaught of European iron and gunpowder. This monumental historical process of reshaping the landscape to suit the needs of the advancing army deserves the most careful and detailed study. If you enjoy this deep dive into the details of historical architecture and tactics, please like this documentary video. Are you ready for the shocking truth about how the capital's most productive agricultural zone was turned into a massive military base? The southern part of the city of Tenochtitlan was famous for its chinampas, unique floating gardens that supplied the vast metropolis with fresh vegetables and corn. These artificial islands, created from layers of lake silt, reeds, and tree roots, were a marvel of ancient hydroponic engineering. Perfectly flat rectangles of fertile land were divided by narrow, straight canals along which farmers moved in their light wooden canoes. However, with the arrival of the conquistadors, this green breadbasket of the empire underwent the most brutal and ruthless tactical transformation in its entire history. The destruction of the floating gardens had not only tactical, but also colossal economic significance for the besieged inhabitants of the ancient capital. The destruction of the fresh corn and bean crops deprived the city's defenders of their last stable domestic source of healthy, vitamin-rich food. It was on these former chinampas that some of the most grueling and protracted positional battles in the entire history of the siege unfolded. The defenders attempted to dig deep trenches in the still unhardened silt to create hidden traps for the advancing Spanish troops. However, the constant presence of water at a shallow depth made these trenches extremely unstable and prone to rapid collapse. The conquistadors, on the other hand, preferred to move exclusively along the stone embankments they had built themselves, avoiding any unnecessary risks on the soft ground. Such positional warfare required immense patience and a methodical approach, ruling out any quick or impulsive tactical maneuvers. The transformation of the gardens into a bridgehead became a symbol of how European pragmatism completely triumphed over the harmony of the local island's natural environment. The artificial islands, created to sustain peaceful life, became the ideal foundation for the machine of destruction of the ancient metropolis. This incredible engineering feat by the conquistadors forever changed the region's geographical map, turning part of the lake into solid land. Have you ever thought about the true scale of this ecological and engineering catastrophe that occurred in the very heart of the Americas? In the next chapter, you will learn how the floating gardens were merely a prelude to the total destruction of the metropolis's grand market squares. As Spanish troops approached the heart of the metropolis, a new, no less complex architectural obstacle stood before them. The vast Tlatelolco market complex, located in the northern part of the island, was a veritable labyrinth of stone stalls and warehouses. This area, surrounded by high walls with narrow passageways, was an ideal location for organizing a deep echelon defense. The city's defenders transformed the market stalls into a system of complex barricades, using heavy stone millstones and logs to reinforce them. The wide open area in front of the main market was exposed to fire from all sides, making a direct assault an extremely dangerous and ill-advised endeavor. The Spanish command decided not to storm the market head-on, but to employ the proven tactic of methodically dismantling the surrounding structures. Engineering units began the systematic demolition of adjacent residential quarters to open up firing sectors for their heavy bronze artillery. The very process of destroying the market required the utmost caution due to the constant threat of sudden counterattacks from hidden underground bunkers. Spanish sappers advanced step by step along the long rows of shops, bringing down heavy stone canopies over the former stalls. The clang of forged horseshoes against ancient stone became the new dominant sound in the area, drowning out the crash of neighboring buildings collapsing. The square, which had once accommodated tens of thousands of peaceful merchants, had now turned into a bleak and empty military parade ground for the Spanish army. The destruction of the main temple complex of Tlatelolco, which towered over the market like a huge stone mountain, presented a particular challenge. This monumental stepped pyramid, built from thousands of massive stone blocks, was the last reliable stronghold of organized resistance. The process of clearing the market also allowed the conquistadors to seize the surviving warehouses containing supplies of dried corn and salted lakefish. These meager but critically important resources were immediately placed under the strict control of the Spanish quartermasters for the needs of the advancing army. The proper distribution of the captured provisions helped sustain the soldiers' strength during the most decisive and difficult days of the protracted urban siege. The conquistadors built their new city literally from the ruins of the old one, transforming its history into the foundation for their future domination. This grandiose construction project on the ashes of the city required colossal labor and a complete disregard for the millennia-old cultural traditions of the conquered island people. The clearing of the market became a crucial turning point, after which a return to the former appearance of the great metropolis became absolutely and physically impossible. The hidden truth that everyone keeps silent about is just how meticulously the Spaniards had planned the new urban development even before the siege ended. The Conquistadors' command had already sketched out the layouts of new neighborhoods directly on maps covered in the ashes of the burning metropolis. Every temple or palace wiped off the face of the earth was immediately replaced in their plans by a future European cathedral or a spacious square. This architectural work on paper proceeded in parallel with the fiercest battles, demonstrating the Spaniards' absolute confidence in their ultimate success. The blueprints of new, straight streets superimposed on the chaotic network of ancient indigenous canals symbolize the complete triumph of European rationality over local tradition. This strict, rectangular grid of blocks, characteristic of European military camps, rigidly constrained the ever-changing landscape of the island's capital. The natural curves of the water channels, which for centuries had dictated the form of Aztec settlement, were forced into the rigid framework of underground stone collectors. The new geometry of space completely ruled out any compromise with the local natural environment, subjecting it to the strict rules of the straight edge and compass. Parallel to the construction of the forts, foundations for future Christian churches were laid directly atop the ruins of Aztec sanctuaries. This had less to do with engineering than with profound symbolic significance, visually cementing the complete triumph of the new religion over the old beliefs. Heavy stone crosses were erected on cleared sites even before the ashes of the burned-out wooden Indian idols had cooled. The very space of the city became a vast battlefield of ideology, where architecture served as the victor's primary and most compelling argument. The new facades were meant to inspire awe with their austere grandeur, forever erasing the memory of the bright colors of ancient Tenochtitlan. The lighting conditions of the new city also changed dramatically due to the disappearance of the tall stepped pyramids that cast long shadows. The wide, straight avenues modeled after European designs were completely exposed to the scorching midday sun. deprived of the familiar coolness of the narrow Indian streets. The stone of the new pavements heated up to the limit, creating a constant, shimmering haze of rising hot air over the city. The absence of greenery and open water in the central districts turned the new capital into a scorching stone oven, uncomfortable for living. Do you consider such destruction of infrastructure the only solution in conditions of dense urban development? In the next chapter, you will learn how the metropolis's most grandiose palace complexes were dismantled. The dismantling of Montezuma's luxurious palace complexes presented a distinct, extremely complex, and ambitious engineering challenge for the invaders. These monumental structures occupied a vast area in the very heart of the city and consisted of dozens of spacious halls and inner courtyards. The thick walls of red desantal, a lightweight yet durable volcanic stone, were held together by a unique lime mortar of remarkable strength. Spanish sappers had to employ a complex system of levers and winches to undermine and bring down these monolithic architectural structures. The rumble of the collapsing walls of the vast palace could be heard even on the far shores of the lake, symbolizing the final collapse of the empire's supreme secular power. The conquistadors were particularly drawn to the vast inner zoo and botanical garden, which were the true pride of the rulers of Tenochtitlan. This unique area, featuring artificial ponds and exotic trees brought from far-off lands, was ruthlessly buried under a layer of construction debris. The complex system of ceramic pipes that supplied clean, fresh water to the fountains was smashed with heavy pickaxes. The place where the rarest plant species from across the empire had been cultivated for decades turned into a flat, dusty parade ground for troop deployments. The destruction of this island of harmony became yet another vivid example of the invaders' complete disregard for the local culture's relationship with nature. The dismantling of the stone palace slabs often exposed the old foundations of buildings from previous eras, revealing the long and complex history of the metropolis's development. Tenochtitlan was constantly rebuilt by its inhabitants, and each new emperor erected his palace atop the ruins of his distant predecessors' structures. The conquistadors, stripping away these cultural layers one by one, literally delved deep into historical time, erasing its physical evidence. This layered structure of the island made the demolition process unpredictable, as monolithic ancient walls were often hidden beneath a thin layer of cobblestones. Overcoming these hidden architectural obstacles required constant ingenuity and immense patience from the Spanish engineering teams. By the end of the siege, the site of the former imperial palaces was a completely flat, meticulously leveled, and roller-compacted stone plaza. Not a single vertical landmark remained in this vast empty space to remind one of the former splendor of Aztec architecture. The conquistadors used this plaza to hold ceremonial military parades and distribute captured trophies among soldiers who had distinguished themselves in battle. Their experience working with volcanic tuff and local binding mortars allowed the Spaniards to adapt their classical architectural designs to the realities of the New World. The ruined Tenochtitlan became a vast experimental site where new methods of large-scale urban planning and monumental construction took shape. Studying these methods offers a fresh perspective on the complex and often brutal process of technological interaction between two utterly different world cultures. The scale of the logistical support required to carry out such a massive destruction boggles the imagination of even modern military engineers and researchers. To ensure the smooth operation of tens of thousands of people, it was necessary to organize an extremely complex system for delivering provisions, drinking water, and basic construction tools. A vast fleet of Allied transport canoes shuttled daily between the capital under siege and the supply bases on the mainland. Coordinating this endless river traffic required the strictest accounting and planning, comparable to managing a major European seaport. The slightest disruption in this complex transport chain threatened an inevitable mutiny or the complete paralysis of the entire large-scale engineering operation. Particular attention was paid to the regular repair and maintenance of heavy iron tools, which wore down incredibly quickly against the hard volcanic rock. Temporary forges operated at full capacity, constantly reforging dulled pickaxes, crowbars, and massive saw teeth for cutting through thick logs. The shortage of high-quality European iron forced the craftsmen to display incredible ingenuity, repeatedly recycling old armor and broken firearm parts. Each working anvil was guarded by an armed sentry to prevent local residents from stealing the precious metal for their own needs. The clang of heavy blacksmiths' hammers blended with the general din of the crumbling city, creating a unique and terrifying industrial symphony of the siege. A significant problem was the accumulation of vast amounts of ash and fine dust resulting from the total burning of the wooden neighborhoods. This gray substance covered the ruins in a thick layer, seeping into the mechanisms of the arquebuses and settling in the lungs of the people working there. To combat this scourge, Spanish engineers organized a system of regular watering of the main transport routes with seawater from the lake. Special teams of water carriers moistened the cleared areas around the clock, turning the fine dust into a dense and sticky, yet safe crust. This simple but labor-intensive solution significantly improved visibility on the construction site and made it easier for thousands of workers and soldiers to breathe. To maintain a high pace of work, the conquistadors actively used material incentives for allied Native American brigades that demonstrated the best and fastest results. They were allocated additional food rations and the best areas for temporary housing in the cleared territories of the metropolis. The complexity of this entire logistical operation lay in the fact that it was carried out under hostile conditions and amid constant shortages. The Spaniards managed to establish an effective, self-sufficient resource management system that functioned like a well-oiled clockwork mechanism. The isolation of Tlatelolco's last and most heavily fortified district marked the culmination of the conquistadors' incredibly long and methodical engineering strategy. This northern part of the island, cut off from the mainland by destroyed dams and blocked from the water by brigantines, had turned into an impregnable stone trap. The defenders of the area, deprived of any means of retreat, built a dense network of barricades from the fragments of statues and heavy basalt blocks. The narrow, winding streets of this area made it impossible to use heavy artillery in direct fire, forcing the Spaniards to resort to close-quarters combat tactics. The space narrowed, and every meter of advance demanded maximum concentration and colossal physical effort from the advancing infantry. The surrounding landscape had been completely cleared of any structures to prevent the besieged from launching sudden nighttime sorties. A vast strip of empty, flat land, several hundred meters wide, separated the Spanish positions from Tlatelolco's first barricades. This dead zone was constantly lit by dozens of bonfires and patrolled by heavily armed horsemen, ready to immediately stop any movement. The soldiers checked the strength of the leather straps on their cuirasses and resharpened the blades of their heavy two-handed swords and short steel daggers. Officers studied the detailed maps of the area, assigning tasks to individual assault groups to ensure maximum coordination. The air was thick with tense anticipation of the outcome, and the monotonous routine of preparation helped the soldiers cope with the incredible fatigue that had built up. The defenders of the area no longer used traditional drums and conch shells, striving to conceal their movements as much as possible behind the high stone walls. This tense silence spoke louder than any words, testifying to the extreme exhaustion and desperate resolve of both opposing sides. Silence became a distinct, powerful weapon of psychological warfare, fraying the soldiers' nerves more than the loudest roar of artillery batteries. This cooperation proved decisive in the final days of the siege, demonstrating the importance of a deep understanding of local conditions for achieving ultimate victory. The Allied Native Americans served as indispensable guides through this gloomy and hostile stone labyrinth leading to the heart of the defense. The final phase of the siege was characterized by the maximum concentration of forces and resources on an extremely limited and difficult stretch of land. Spanish batteries were moved right up to the perimeter of Tlatelolco, preparing to unleash a barrage of fire on the enemy's identified strongpoints. Heavy infantry formed into dense assault columns, awaiting the sound of the trumpet, which was to serve as the signal to begin the decisive attack. All elements of the conquistadors' massive military machine were at full combat readiness, synchronizing their actions to deliver a final, powerful blow. This moment of absolute concentration before the storm was the culmination of the entire months-long, grueling campaign to capture the great island capital. The siege of Tlatelolco went down in history as a classic example of a flawlessly organized blockade in the complex conditions of dense urban development. The conquistadors demonstrated incredible patience and methodical precision, eschewing quick and risky attacks in favor of precise engineering calculations. They turned time into their greatest ally, forcing the complex architecture and isolated geography of the area to work against its own creators. This pragmatic approach, based on strict logic and iron discipline, proved to be the key to crushing the metropolis's last line of defense. The experience of this siege forever changed European military engineers' understanding of tactics for conducting combat operations in large urban areas. The last day of the great metropolis began in thick morning fog, which lay like a dense blanket over the ruins of the devastated central squares. The silence was broken only by the rhythmic sound of the footsteps of the heavy Spanish infantry, methodically taking up their positions along the cleared perimeter. The city's architecture, once striking in its splendor, had finally transformed into a bleak, colorless lunar landscape of cracked gray tuff. The wooden structures that remained intact were immediately set ablaze to clear the area of any possible cover or obstacles. Thick black smoke rose once more over the lake, marking the final stage of the destruction of the continent's most complex and beautiful urban infrastructure. The process of destruction reached its logical climax, leaving not a single chance to preserve even a small part of the ancient architectural heritage. By noon, the resistance of the defenders, deprived of their last resources and exhausted by a days-long, relentless blockade, began to fade rapidly and noticeably. Spanish units advanced unhindered into the central square of Tlatelolco, where just a few weeks earlier, the most extensive trade had been in full swing. The conquistadors' logistical machine quickly shifted from a mode of destruction to one of large-scale construction and the organization of new supplies. Through the same channels that had recently delivered gunpowder, high-quality lime and heavy wooden beams for new roofs were now being transported. The fall of the capital radically changed not only the island's architecture, but also the entire political and ecological balance of the vast Mesoamerican region. European methods of farming and livestock raising began to rapidly supplant traditional forms of agriculture, altering the appearance of the surrounding green valleys. The water supply system of the Valley of Mexico, disrupted during the brutal siege, was never fully restored to its original harmonious state. These sweeping changes to the landscape were a direct consequence of the ruthless engineering efficiency that the conquistadors demonstrated on the ruins of Tenochtitlan. The day of the fall became the starting point for a completely new, complex, and dramatic colonial history of the vast American continent. The victory of European engineering over local traditions determined the trajectory of the entire vast region for many centuries to come. This history teaches us that true power over a territory lies not only in the force of arms, but also in the ability to completely reshape the landscape. The ruins of the great Tenochtitlan serve as a stark reminder of the fragility of even the most majestic creations of human hands in the face of time and progress. We have examined in detail the incredible engineering story of the final hours of the great metropolis, hidden behind the sparse lines of classic academic textbooks. Behind every destroyed temple and every newly laid street lay rigorous calculation, brutal logistics, and the conquistadors' relentless will to achieve total victory. This unprecedented clash of architectural traditions and military technology forever changed the face of a vast continent, transforming a thriving island paradise into the foundation of a new, harsh world. The historical experience of Tenochtitlan proves that the most grandiose victories are often forged not only with heavy swords, but also with ordinary pickaxes in the hands of disciplined sappers. What other great architectural mysteries of ancient civilizations would you like to see in our upcoming documentary videos? Write your suggestions in the comments and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new in-depth historical investigations.